Hello, everyone. It is great to be with you today. My name is Kelly Wilson, and I'm excited to be able to talk with you a little bit today about the application process and share 5 tips to unlock success to MBA applications. I wanted to just make sure that you're aware of an event coming up that GMAT Club is putting on. It's November 28th and 29th. It's the biggest MBA fair of 2023. All of the M7 schools will be there, HBS, Stanford, Wharton, etc., as well as other top 30 MBA programs. So you want to register for that. You'll find a link in the comments box. So thank you very much for considering to register for that event. It will not disappoint, I'm sure. I would like to go ahead and talk to you a little bit about um, the application process. I know that you're probably thinking about round two. And if you're here early thinking about next year, all the better for you. You won't feel as stressed as other people on the call. But my goal today is to help you navigate this process as much as possible. And so I'm wondering, before we get started, would you mind just dropping in the chat where you're calling in from today? I'd love to see where you are geographically and just kind of get a vision for who's on the call. All right, I see some folks from um, there's someone from Taiwan, from India, from Ghana. Um, it keeps coming from Bangkok, Thailand. Had a great time when I visited your city. Toronto, Canada, terrific. It looks like you all are another person coming from India. It looks like we've got people joining us from all over the world. And so I want to thank you for taking this opportunity and encourage you to type a comment in the chat box if you have a question as I'm going along the presentation, and I'll try to work your question in. If I am unable to do that, we'll definitely get to the questions at the end, but I'm happy to have you comment as we go along. So let's make this as interactive as possible. Oh, one more shout out for Nepal. So thanks for joining from Nepal as well. Okay, so a little bit about me. As I mentioned, I'm Kelly Wilson. I have worked in the business school um, arena for over 23 years specifically in higher ed, leading master's and MBA admissions offices. Um, Most recently, I led admissions for those programs at Carnegie Mellon Tepper. And prior to that, I was at Georgetown McDonough, and then I started in Pittsburgh at the CAT School. Um, I joined Accepted last year, and I'm having a blast helping candidates to navigate this process and to understand, um, from an insider's view, how you might best present yourself in the admissions process. My teams and I reviewed more than 38,000 applications over the time I worked in higher ed. So I've seen a lot, and I certainly can help you navigate the process if you need some help from an admissions consultant. I would like to talk a little bit about just kind of lay the landscape for the day, and you won't be surprised to see the different application components as the table of contents. And we will walk through this together. And if you have questions about the content, please do feel free to ask. So you might say to me, Kelly, planning is not necessarily an application component, and I would wholeheartedly agree. However, I would tell you that it is one of the most important steps that you can take. And this is an area that you don't want to skip. Getting organized is critical to your success. And so I'm a big proponent of using Excel to keep track of things. And so you may want to create a document in Excel where you have the list of schools that you're applying to. And, as you think about round two, you're going to want to prioritize which school you'll work on first and then work through your list. And so you want to start really with the deadline dates. Work on the applications that the deadline is earlier and start from there. One of the things I would suggest that you do is go to each of the websites for the programs. The admission section will spell out all kinds of information that you need to know as you're preparing for applications. You want to note some specific details that might be different from kind of the generic application process. Each school may have some specific things that they want you to do that it might be a little bit different than other schools. So, an example of that would be if you're applying with a test waiver, um, you will want to determine by looking at the website what the process is for that. Some schools ask you to apply by a certain date, and they'll give you an answer on the test waiver prior to your submitting the application. Others advise you to complete the application and submit it by the deadline, and then within X number of days, you'll learn if you received the test waiver or not. So those are the kinds of details that you want to make sure that you're paying attention to. I was working with a candidate the other day who said, when should I create an application account? Is it okay to create it now? And my advice is absolutely create an application account for each of the schools that you're considering and get in there and poke around a little bit. You don't want to be creating the application account, 2 nights before the deadline, because you want to make sure that the information that you're going to be asked that you have full awareness of it. And so, how many essays are there? What are the essay prompts? And then you will notice as you're considering different schools and as you're in different application systems, sometimes there's a word count for an essay, and sometimes there's a character count. And that really depends on the way the system was set up. So make sure that you're paying attention to that as well. Um, for each of the programs, add to your timeline document the essay prompts so that you have them quick and ready at your disposal. One of the other things I would like you to note is there an optional essay? And how might you use it to your benefit? Um, think about the optional essay as an opportunity to share something about yourself that you haven't been able to share otherwise. So for some, it may be context around a bumpy academic performance in undergrad. For others, you may want to share a little bit about your background if there's something you weren't able to communicate that was important as in terms of shaping who you are as a person and as an individual. Schools really provide that as an option. So don't think you have to complete it, but if there's additional information you want to share, you certainly can do that. Um, Also, you want to make sure that you're aware of any additional short answer questions. And so sometimes those are questions including career goals. Other times there may be, just some brief questions that you will be asked, and you want to just, be aware of them. Again, word or character count, remember that as well. You also want to make sure that you understand how many recommendations are required for the program. And is the school suggesting that you get a professional recommendation or is an academic recommendation okay? And it's important, especially as we're talking now, if you haven't started this process yet and you want to apply in round two, um, there is time to get it done. You just need to be organized and you need to be providing your recommenders with information that they need, and we'll get to that in a bit. You also want to make sure that you have available to you the documents that you need to upload. For instance, academic transcripts, test scores. You want to make sure that you are not kind of rushing around at the last minute trying to get your hands on these documents. One word about the academic transcripts. You'll see schools referring to unofficial transcripts. And what that is really just a transcript that you have in your possession. So a literal transcript, you have it in your possession versus one that's sent directly from the school to the institution, from your undergrad school to the MBA program. Um, if you have it in your possession and you've opened it, then it's unofficial and you can upload that. Um, be careful, many schools don't accept web transcripts where you can go into your student account and print off a transcript yourself, kind of a web, grades from the website. Those are usually not accepted as unofficial. So pay attention to those details on the admissions websites. So my tip here is get organized. You're going to need to track several items for each application, and you want to make sure that you've got all of the information um, that you need. Okay, so next let's talk about your resume and demonstrating impact. So for your resume, generally speaking, you want an easy to read format. I've seen many different kind of resumes and some, you can tell that people have taken a lot of care to make it look attractive and there's color and the photograph of themselves and, information that may be uh interesting but less relevant than the admissions committee would prefer. And so make sure that you understand the kind of resume that you should be submitting is really an easy to read format. From a what it looks like perspective, it doesn't need to have all the bells and whistles. It doesn't, like, the color is unimportant to the admissions committee. It's really the content that's important. And so the three general sections you'll have are professional experience, your educational background, and then activities and skills. From the professional standpoint, from your experiences, you want to list each of the positions that you've held. If you're early in your career, relevant internships should be included as well. Please make sure if you have been with a company for a number of years and you've um, received a promotion, make sure that you're listing both positions. Often I'll see, or I've seen candidates just put the most recent position, and honestly, you're selling yourself short by not conveying to the admissions committee that you received that promotion. So it's important for that information to be clear. And then in the education section, you want to include the degrees you earned. If you have any additional information there, um, special awards that you received that are related to that institution. You want to make sure that you have the name of the institution, the degree you earned, the dates that you attended as well. Also in a section toward the bottom or at the bottom, activities and skills would include things like volunteering, any organizations that you're a member of, programming skills or other technology skills, um, maybe certifications that you've earned, languages, hobbies, that kind of information can be shared at the bottom of your resume. And so As you're thinking about your resume, the tip here is to think achievements versus responsibilities. You want to quantify your results for the admissions committee. And so, an example that I'll share with you on that is a resume bullet point might read something like created operational efficiency of applications through continuous integration and deployment pipeline. So this is a person who works in software engineering and um, or in a software role for a company, and they were this is a bullet that was on their resume. And so after talking with them a little bit to try to determine how can we quantify that bullet, what we came up with is that they doubled the operational efficiency of over 15 applications through continuous integration in the deployment pipeline. And so you see where we indicated that the efficiency was doubled, and so that's impact, and it was really done for um, a significant number of applications, and so it was 15 plus applications, and so that's the difference between an achievement versus a responsibility, or rather maybe quantifying the results. Um, and so again, as you're thinking about your resume, it's usually want to it's usually the one of the first things that I would look at as I was reading an application, because it's a great snapshot of you um, as I'm reading the application and trying to get a sense of who is this applicant. It's one of the places that I would say many admissions directors start at. There is a question here. Can you please repeat the experience part regarding different positions at the same organization? Certainly, because, and I'm glad that you asked for clarification, because I think this is really important. So let's say that you've been with an organization for 5 years. You started out in an entry level position and you were promoted 2 years later. You want to make sure that you show both of those positions on your resume. And so you'll have the initial position you were in with two or three bullet or three, probably around three bullets, and then the next position you were in probably with 3 to 5 bullets. Um, and that allows you would have the time frame for being at that organization, and then also in those positions. And so that gives you or gives the reader the knowledge that you were promoted in your role. I hope that helped. If you need further clarification, please post another question. All right, let's go on to the letter of recommendation. And this is an important part of the application, because this is the only part of the application where you're going to get a third party um, to provide insights about your application and your candidacy. And so I have some do's and don'ts for you. So you do want to select a current or previous supervisor. That's the best person to write your recommendation. And specifically, it's because they have the ability to make an observation of you in the workplace and convey relevant information about you, your leadership skills, how you've received criticism, and how you've responded to it. I'm thinking about a couple of other questions that might be on the recommendation letter. Um, and so as you're thinking about who to get to write your recommendation, quite honestly, if the CEO is willing to write your letter of recommendation, that's a nice thing if they work with you every day. However, if they are doing it because you have a relationship with them, and it's really a casual relationship, they're not going to be able to write the same kind of content. So the content is important more so than the title. I will tell you that when I worked at Georgetown, I had a recommendation that I remember to this day, and you'll know why, because it came from Bill Clinton. And so I remember that it came from Bill Clinton. I can't tell you a thing that he said about the candidate. And at the time, I remember thinking, what a missed opportunity, because it was clear that Bill Clinton didn't know him, but knew him. He was kind of like a couple of steps removed from a relationship standpoint. So while it's cool that I can remember that Bill Clinton submitted an application or a recommendation for someone, it really wasn't that cool for the candidate because it didn't provide value. I would encourage you to meet with your recommender, talk with them about your career goals and why you want to pursue an MBA. Um, it's good for them to have the context, and you may even want to provide them with your resume. Remind them of some key achievements as you work together, some things they might want to write about. Some key don'ts is don't write the essay for the recommender to sign. There are a lot of missteps that can happen in that case, and um, there are different software systems that can identify uh, whether or not the content came from the same computer or IP address as the other as the application. And so if someone says to you, yes, I'll write your recommendation, but can you draft it for me? Um, what I would encourage you to say is, I can provide you some key achievements, some bullet points about, things that might make sense to talk about. But if you don't have time to write it, I'll ask someone else. The other thing to remember is your recommender will need to submit the recommendation in order for your application to move forward in the process. So let me break this down a little bit for you. The application or the recommendation does not have to be submitted by the application deadline. The piece of the puzzle that has to be submitted by the application deadline is the content that you submit, the person's name and the information about them. As soon as you hit save, they'll get an email asking them to fill out the recommendation on your behalf. Um, what you should do with your recommender is work with them on a timeline and give them a deadline that by which you would like them to submit the recommendation. And then make sure you're keeping an eye on that. You can log into your application portal and see whether or not the recommender submitted their recommendation for your application. And so the tip here is, from a third party insight, the recommender provides valuable information about you, but you want to make sure you choose wisely. Make sure it's someone that can provide information about you and how you perform at work, talk about your skills and your talents and your achievements. All right, let's move on to essays. And this is where you get to control the narrative. All right, so when you're thinking about the essays, you have, if we step back to the beginning of the presentation, you have done your work to develop your list or your spreadsheet. You have an understanding of which schools you're applying to and what the essays are. You need to spend some time, regardless of how many schools and regardless of how many essays, you need to spend some time um, reflecting. Um, what I mean by that is, what are the points in your life that have really shaped who you are? What are the circumstances that surrounded that? Are there specific achievements that you're proud of? Are there times when you failed and learned something? And so by being able to think through, like step back literally and think through um, this information when you're going to write the application. You're going to have a lot of the content, um, you know, kind of already at the forefront of your mind. I would say, get in front of a computer and just start typing things that you're thinking about, decisions that you made, or circumstances that changed maybe how you thought about something or your perception about something. um, that is so critical. And at accepted, part of the work we do with applicants is help them with their essays, and that's exactly the place we start, with a reflection exercise. And so um, it's critical to really conveying the information that will position you in the best light with the admissions committee. um, so you want to make sure, this seems like an obvious thing to say, but you want to make sure that you actually answer the question or answer what's posed in the prompt. I have read applications where I look at the essay and I think, where did this come from? Because it's not giving me the information that is asked for. And so either the candidate, pulled an essay from another school and plopped it in there because they thought it was good enough, or they wanted to convey some information and didn't know where to put it. So they were kind of, you know, putting a square peg in a round hole and just giving me the information they wanted me to have versus answering the question that was posed. If you don't answer the question that's posed, that is a misstep, and you want to make sure that that you're taking care to do that. The other thing I would say is, too often candidates think they have to present a certain persona in order to be admitted to MBA programs, because you've heard about, the generalities of a given program, and therefore I must be this type of applicant. When the reality is, every MBA program is looking for a group of unique people who have experiences that are different than others and will bring something, a perspective that's different or new or unique to the classroom and to the community. And so by being authentic and providing context around, your life and um, your experiences, that's how you begin to set yourself apart from other candidates who on paper may have a very similar profile. And then the next thing I want to just encourage you to think about is, as you're writing your essays, we talk a lot about show, don't tell. So an example of that, show, don't tell, is if you, you know, are writing an essay and you say, I joined the company in a rotational leadership program. That's a great statement, and I suspect it's accurate if you're writing it there. Um, but the reader might think, okay, so what? And you should be thinking that yourself. You should be thinking, when you write a statement, um, can someone ask, so what? And your answer to that might be, I was able to make an impact on my first project. Okay, that's better. Then I might ask the question, well, how? And so that's when you're really getting down to the content that you want to include. And you might answer how by saying, I led the launch of XYZ project, overseeing a group of 7 and coordinating with other functional leaders over the timeline of the project to ensure success. And then tell, if it's appropriate for the essay, tell the story. So remember, show how you did something. Don't just tell that you did it. Um, Remember the questions, so what and how. That'll help you as you're writing the essays. And then make sure, once you have written it, step away from it. You need to gain some space between the thinking that you've done and the writing that you've done. Take the afternoon and do something completely different, so your mind kind of resets and you can look at this again, from a fresh perspective. And oftentimes, if you print something out and read it on paper, it helps from that perspective as well. So you want to carefully edit the writing. And again, this is something that admissions consultants can help you with. It's actually something I really enjoy doing, which is working with a candidate to, through this process, helping them to understand where they might need a little bit more content around something, or maybe even inline editing to make sure that the grammar and the sentence structure is right. And so, if that's something that you need help with, of course, please let us know. But if it's not something that you're able to do, get a friend who can read your essay for you, and they can help you with maybe doing some editing, but they can also help to make sure that you've answered the question. There's another essay or essay format that you'll want to think about, and that's video essays. Many schools have them now, and just like the written essay, you need to prepare and you want to practice. And so, in some cases, you will know what the video essay prompt is, and you can literally practice responding to the prompt, recording yourself, and then critiquing it. Um, Sometimes you won't have the question, but you'll know the type of question it might be. And so then you just come up with, it's a few options and pick one out of the hat so you don't know exactly which one you're answering at the time, and then respond to it while you're recording yourself. In addition to the content of your answer, you want to make sure that you're coming across in the video as warm and engaging. And so what that means is you want to make sure you're smiling. um, at the beginning of the interview, thank them for giving you the opportunity to share this information with them. Even though you're being recorded and you're not sitting there in front of someone, you need to pretend that you are, and then really try to be engaging and make sure that your demeanor is one that comes across as warm, and it'll put you in a better position if you can do that. Before I move on to the next slide, there's a question here that I want to get to, and it goes back to the letter of recommendation. And the question is, can you please highlight once what are the key points that should be included in the letter of recommendation? So for most MBA programs, there is going to be a form that your recommender will fill out versus an open kind of letter format that most master's programs have. So if you're applying to the MBA, one of the things that you can do is many schools adopted, sorry, I couldn't think of the word. Many schools adopted the GMAC Common Letter of Recommendation. And you can double check, usually on the website, the school will let you know if they're using the Common Letter of Recommendation. And if so, go to GMAC's website, and there is a copy of the recommendation form that you can take a look at. Schools can add a question or two to it, some short answer questions, but you'll see the format of the GMAC LOR is a series of competencies that your recommender will pick from a list of 5 or 6 statements about the competency, the one that most aligns with you, and then there will be a series of short answer questions. So you can get that information quite easily. And I hope that helped you. Let me just back up by saying, before I move on, is controlling the narrative is important because this is where you have control within the scope of the application, and you want to make sure that you're positioning yourself in the most positive way possible. And this is where you can do it in the essays. All right, let's move on to the interview. And this is where you need to sell yourself. So again, I've got some do's and don'ts. So in the interview, understand the format. First of all, you should learn from the school whether or not the interview is based on just your resume, or if the interviewer has read your application and may ask some clarifying questions about your resume or about your application. So they're two different styles or two different approaches, and you want to make sure that you're prepared if it is an interview where you may get asked questions about your application. You may want to read through your application just to kind of make sure that everything is clear in your mind for that particular school, because not all of the questions are the same on every application. So understand the interview format in terms of um, the types of questions they ask as well. Typically, you'll find a mix of your general questions like why the MBA, why my school, um, and then some competency based questions like tell me about a time when you were in a leadership role and you faced a challenge. What was the challenge? How did you face it? That was always one of my go-to interview questions. Um, and then that means that you'll need to be prepared with some specific situations of where you have done certain things. So leadership challenges, um, made a mistake or failed is a good one so that you can demonstrate what you learned about yourself. So you want to make sure that you're prepared with behavioral question scenarios, and make sure that you're talking about the situation and task. So here's the situation, and here was the thing that I was working on, and then what action you took, and what was the resolution. So that's the STAR method. Again, situation, task, the action that you took, and the resolution. You want to spend just as much time as you need on the situation and task, and spend the most time on your answer on the action that you took and the resolution. As you're starting the interview, make sure that you're prepared and thank the interviewer for the opportunity right off the bat. Again, making that a good impression um, is always a positive thing. And then treat the interview the same as you would a job interview. Make sure you dress the part. Um, I have a couple of stories of doing interviews, and I have to tell you, the there was this one person I was interviewing at one time, and that clearly didn't consider what was in the background of um, the video, or what part of the background I could see, because if they did, they would be just flabbergasted that they would do a professional interview with that kind of background. And so it can be something very simple. It doesn't have to be like a fancy setting. It just has to be um, something that's very professional, and you want to make sure that you're dressing the part as well. Some interview don'ts: try not to, or don't try to take control of the interview, not the interviewer. That's a typo. I apologize. Um, don't try to take control of the interviewer either, but don't try to take control of the interview. You want to make sure that you're engaged, but don't provide information and go on longer than you should. So make sure that you're paying attention to the body language of the interviewer as well. Don't be boastful. Humility goes a long way. And so you may have done great things, and there's certainly a way to convey that. Be humble about it. And so make sure that you're not boastful. And don't forget to have questions for the interviewer. You want to make sure at the end of the interview that you have a few questions, not information that you can find on the website, but information maybe about the experience. Even if it's a current student, the experience that they have. If it's a staff member, perhaps why they've decided to work there, and what they like about the community, the larger community, broader community. Don't forget to send a thank you note. Email's great. A handwritten thank you note will be noticed even more. Not that that's going to weigh on the admission decision, but it really the impression it makes is a really positive one, and you're really establishing your brand, and that's a great way to do it. One thing I want to go back to the interview format. Um, I talked a little bit about a typical format of the mix of general questions and behavioral interviews, but I also want to make sure if you're applying um, to Wharton, for instance, they have a team-based discussion interview. And so there are a few schools that do the interview process, have a little bit of a different take on the interview process. So make sure that you have a full understanding of that as you're going through the process. So the the tip here is sell yourself, put your best foot forward, be prepared, and be your authentic self. All right, let's get to the final slide, which is just a quick recap of the tips. So you want to get organized, demonstrate impact, think about the third-party insights, control the narrative, and sell yourself. Are there any questions, any other questions on the content? If so, I'm happy um, to take questions. I'd like to tell you a little bit before we get into the questions, a little bit about uh, Accepted. So, the organization that I work for, we are a team of MBA admissions experts and industry leaders. Um, we have combined over 70 years of direct admissions committee expertise, leading admissions teams from Tuck to Georgetown, Ross, Yale, and many more. Um, we have been an organization since 1994 and have been very successful in helping candidates apply to and be accepted to the schools that they're interested in. We work with you as an individual. As I mentioned on the essay piece, we want to get to know about you and your strengths and understand really who you are so that we can help you to tell your story and reach your goals. Um, you can find on our website right up front pricing and the flexible service offerings, from a comprehensive package where we're working with you on all parts of the application um, at a flat rate to hourly options where it might be more in line with your budget to specifically hire us to work with you on your essay or on your resume or on some general consulting services as well, maybe even interview prep. There are free resources on our site that I offer to candidates all the time. Please come and again, take advantage of what's available to you. And you are able to sign up for a free consultation, a 30-minute call with us to talk about your profile specifically and help you think about what are the steps that you'll take toward your MBA program. Okay, so let's see. There are a couple of questions. So here's one that if I submit my application and my recommender submits the reference from the same office computer, would it be a problem? How can I address this if I'm flagged? I would say yes, it could be a problem. Um, I would just avoid it. And if it's already happened, then I would say if it's flagged, then you will just need to share that information. I think the best case is to avoid it. Um, so let's see. So here's someone asking about a scholarship. So this candidate has, thank you so much for your question, by the way, has provided a profile and has asked, do I stand a chance of landing scholarships from the like of, and then list some schools, top T15 to T25 programs. It's really So I would say, as you what I would encourage you to do is sign up for a free consultation, and I'd be happy to get into that with you. Um, there's more to the conversation than the information you've provided here, and I'd love to chat with you about it. So, if you're available, I'll make myself available. You can go to our website. You'll find the free consultation. You can go right to my profile and request to meet with me. And if you don't see a time that works, then you can email us and I will make sure to work with you directly on finding a time that suits both of us. Paul is asking, what are the 4 categories for interviews as an applicant who has yet to start the process? If there are more, can you name them? Um, so Paula, I think if I'm understanding your question, I talked about we called it's referred to it as a blind interview, which means the resume only. And then there's an interview where the candidate or the admissions person has read your file. And then there there are formats as well. So, one that I talked about might be the team-based discussion like Wharton has. There are a couple of schools that have had those types of interviews. Um, Wharton one, and there's a Ross used to. I would have to look at my notes to see if they're still doing their team interviews this year. The other thing that I think about is the competency based versus kind of general questions. I think that's the most typical. Um, the other one, I guess the other nuance you might think about is you could interview with an admissions officer, a current student, or an alumnus. And so you'll usually know ahead of time which you're interviewing with. And you may want to what's helpful to identify who you're interviewing with is the type of question you'll have for them might be different based on who it is and what they've done. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Um, okay, so Tarun is asking, given the fact that a lot of schools have a small cohort, how do I enhance the chances of admission in round 2? Also, I come from an unconventional background. So here's the good news, Tarun. Um, What I tell everyone that says to me I have a non-traditional background is play that as a strength. When you are applying to programs, there are many people that are applying who have a very similar type of background as many other people who are applying. And so use your unconventional background as a way to demonstrate um, the diversity and perspective that you'll offer the program. And then I think really the way that you enhance your chances of admission beyond your grades and your test scores um, is the essays and the resume, and in particular the essays. This is where admissions consultants can help you. And I the process of seeing the first draft of that a candidate writes through what they end up delivering to a school as part of their application is really an exciting process to be part of. And that's really one of the best ways to stand out is differentiate yourself through your essays and of course any in-person or personal interaction you have with candidates from the or with members of the school's community. I also want to just remind you that in the chat, you'll see the link for accepted consultation that you can sign up for. I also want to remind you about the MBA fair that's coming up. I know that it's an opportunity if you haven't gotten a chance to talk to schools, it's a great opportunity for you to do it. And so if you scroll up into the chat, you'll see a link there as well to register for for that MBA fair that's coming up on the 28th and 29th. This is a good question. Can you clarify the importance of extracurricular activities in the admissions process? So when I think of, first of all, let me tell you what I think of as extracurricular activities. So I think of them as anything that you're doing outside of your core role at work. So an extracurricular activity to me could mean that you serve on I'm just gonna serve on a DEI committee at work. So that's not part of your core goal, but that's something that you do because you enjoy it, you think you add value, and it's something that's important to you. Or maybe you're part of the recruiting team for your organization and you go to college campuses. Those are extracurricular activities, just as volunteer activities may be being a member of the local soccer club, or I guess football club for the rest of the world. Um, or maybe even, if you're part of a volunteer organization, if you have a leadership role in that organization, that's great. So extracurricular activities, the purpose or the importance of them is to demonstrate the way that you, one, give back to your community, and two, it demonstrates the values that you hold, where you spend your time, and one of the most precious resources we have is our time. Where you spend your time and how you spend your time can give the admissions committee a fuller picture of who you are as a candidate. Is it absolutely necessary that you have a very dense extracurricular section or activities and skills section, or within the activities and skills section? No, it's not. It's not critical, but it does help paint uh, a more colorful picture of who you are. Let's see. So, next question, how much impact does a preliminary interview have on an applicant? For example, a lot of schools offer student interviews, as you mentioned, by looking only at your resume. So, so I think you need to gain clarity on, is it an evaluative interview, that you're so is it an informational interview that you're talking with a student, or is it the evaluative interview for the admissions process? Both are important, but if it's the latter, it means something different than it's the former. So if it's an informational, as you said, preliminary interview, if it's an informational interview and they have your resume, generally speaking, I don't know, number one, I don't know why they would call it an interview if it's not part of the evaluation. But if it's an informational interview, um, the person will still be able to provide the admissions office um, some feedback on that interaction. And so you want to be just as prepared for that, as you would interviewing with an admission officer. One of the things, or one of the benefits of having you talk with a student, is you have the opportunity to learn from them about their experience. And if you do have a conversation, whether it's a preliminary interview or if it's just a conversation that you have with a student prior to applying, really try to dig in and understand what their experience is and learn about things that might excite you about the program, because you can include that in your application as well. Um, and I would be happy to talk to you about the how you can do that. If you sign up for a free consultation, I'd be happy to do that. At this point, we've covered all of the questions. If anyone has any last question, we do have a couple of minutes left. I'm happy to just pause for a minute to see if there are other questions that come in. Just want to remind you that there are free resources on our website. You can have a free 30-minute consultation with one of our with one of our consultants. We have consultants who specialize with MBA as well as other areas. And so if you have, even a colleague who might be applying to a different type of program, Accepted may be able to help them as well. Um, but at this point, it looks like all the questions are answered. So I want to just say thank you for joining me today. If we at Accepted can help you, we would love to do that. Would love to partner with you. And don't forget to sign up for the MBA Fair on November 28th and 29th. Thank you. Oh, one quick question. If you specifically want to speak with me, you can request that when you register for the free consultation. So thank you so much. I look forward to potentially talking with you. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week and enjoy the weekend. Take care.